The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Longman Simplified English Series. Read by Surya Thongma. Chapter 27. Saved. Tuesday afternoon came. The village of St. Petersburg still mourned. Public prayers had been said for the lost children. Most of the searchers had given up the task and had gone back to their daily work, seeing that it was plain that the children could never be found. Mrs. Thatcher was very ill, and most of the time her mind was wandering. People said that it was heartbreaking to hear her call her child and see her raise her head and listen. Aunt Polly's gray hair had grown almost white. The village went sadly to its rest on Tuesday night. In the middle of the night, a wild burst of ringing broke from the village bells, and in a moment the streets were swarming with excited, half-dressed people who shouted, "Get up! Get up! They're found! They're found!" The beating of tin pans and the blowing of horns added the uproar. The crowd moved towards the river, met the children coming in an open carriage, drawn by shouting villagers gathered round it, joined its homeward march and swept gloriously up the main street, cheering madly. The village was lit up. Nobody went to bed again. It was the greatest night the little town had ever seen. During the first half hour, a procession of villagers made their way, one by one, through Judge Thatcher's house, seized the saved ones, and kissed them, shook Mrs. Thatcher's hand, and wandered out, raining tears all over the place. Aunt Polly's happiness was complete, and Mrs. Thatcher's nearly so. It would be complete as soon as the messenger sent to the cave with the great news reached her husband. Tom lay on a couch with an eager audience about him and told the history of the wonderful adventures, closing with a description of their escape. He followed 2 passages as far as his kite string would reach. He followed a third to the end of the string, and was about to turn back when he caught sight of a far-off glimmer that looked like daylight. He crawled towards it, pushed his head and shoulders through a small hole, and saw the broad Mississippi rolling by. And if it had happened to be night, he would not have seen that glimmer of the light, and would not have explored that passage any farther. He told how he went back, broke the good news to Becky, and managed to convince her. She almost died of joy when she saw the daylight. They pushed their way out and sat and cried with gladness. Some men came along in a boat and did not believe Tom's wild tale at first, because they said, "You are 5 miles down the river below the valley where the cave is." The boatmen rowed them to the house, gave them supper, made them rest till 2 or 3 hours after dark, and then brought them home. Before daylight, Judge Thatcher and the handful of searchers with him were informed of the great news. The effects of 3 days and nights of exhaustion and hunger could not be shaken off at once. As Tom and Becky soon discovered, they had to stay in bed all Wednesday and Thursday. Tom was nearly as strong as ever by Saturday, but Becky did not leave her room until Sunday, and then she looked as if she had had a long illness. Tom learned of heart sickness and went to see him. The widow of Douglas stayed by to see that no exciting subject was mentioned to the patient. At home, Tom was told of the Cardiff Hill affair and that the wrecked man's body had been found in the river near the ferry landing. Perhaps he had been drowned while trying to escape. A fortnight later, when Tom called at Judge Thatcher's to see Becky, the judge and some friends made Tom talk. Someone asked him jokingly as if he would like to go to the cave again. Tom says that he would not mind. Well, I've not the least doubt that there are others like you, Tom, says the judge. But we prevented that. Nobody will get lost in that cave again. Why? Because 2 weeks ago I had its big door strengthened and locks put on it. And I've got the keys. Tom turned as white as a sheet. Oh, Judge, Redskin Joe's in the cave.